Hello everyone, so I decided I want to make a video talking about my 10 favorite DC Comics arcs from the past 5 years because I saw an article pop up on my feed about this and I was like, oh, this would be cool to make a video about. And so I decided to do my own list. A lot of people talk about how modern comics aren't very good anymore. There are a lot of modern comics that suck, but like always, there's also a lot of comics that are really good. And so I thought this would be fun to do, especially because it's a harder list to put together when you're just doing one publisher, in that case being DC Comics, instead of doing anything else like including Image or Marvel. So I thought this would be a good time. So let's get into it, starting off with my number 10, which is Flash Forward. I did not expect a Scott Lobdell book to make it on here, but when I was thinking about books from 2018 to 2023, Flash Forward kept popping up, and I was like, man, I really liked Flash Forward. I'm generally not a big Scott Lobdell fan. He's not one of my favorite writers. I think a lot of his comics aren't that great, but Flash Forward is amazing. I love that comic. Going back and rereading some of it for this video, it's still so good. You got Brett Booth on pencils, who's one of the best and maybe my favorite Flash artist of all time, definitely up there. He's so good at drawing Wally, and this story, if you haven't read it, this was the first part of Wally's redemption after Heroes in Crisis, which completely ruined him because he killed a bunch of people. This book, it starts up with him locked up. He's locked up with supervillains because he essentially is a supervillain, and he's just there doing nothing, thinking about how sad he is and how horrible his life is. And then a Fuginaut comes in, which is sort of DC's version of the Watchers, and comes in and is like, hey, I need you to help because the universe is in trouble, because throughout the multiverse there is dark matter that's eating these worlds, and I need you to help stop it. You're the fastest man alive. So then we get a universe hopping adventure where Wally goes from universe to universe, helping the people of that universe to not all die, to not their entire world cave into dark matter. You get a lot of really cool instances and cool things happening here, including one where he fights with Roy, which he just murdered Roy in his own universe on accident in Heroes in Crisis. So there's some emotional stuff there, and they fight vampires, and there's a lot of cool stuff here. It's a great read. If you haven't checked out Flash Forward, check it out. It's really good. I can highly recommend it. I don't hear enough people talking about it. It did get praised when it first came out, but since then I haven't heard a lot of people ever bring it up, and to me it deserves to be on a list like this. Number 9 is Batman White Knight from Sean Gordon Murphy. Of course this was going to be on here. This book was all the rave. It's gotten several sequels since then. It's really shot up Sean Gordon Murphy's name. He was always talented, but this really made people aware of who he is. Great writer, great artist, and I really enjoyed this book along with a lot of other people. This is a very popular book for good reason. In this, Joker is seemingly cured, and now he's going by Jack Napier, and he's trying to he's trying to be a politician in Gotham and help, and Batman's sort of the bad guy, so it sort of flips everything on its head to where Batman's seen as sort of the bad guy that's kind of holding Gotham back. He's kind of just like a very violent, not great person, and then Jack is the one that's Joker is trying to make things better. So it seems there's a lot of different elements to it. You also get the best Harley Quinn in years, because in my opinion, everyone that's really written Harley Quinn outside of Paul Dini has done a horrible job, and I hate the character. But I loved her in the animated series. I loved what Paul Dini had done with her in the comics, but everything since then has just been ass, really bad. But I love Sean Gordon Murphy's version of Harley in this book, in the first one. There's some stuff in the sequels that I'm not the biggest fan of he does with Harley, but in the first one, I really like her. You essentially get to see like old school animated series Harley take on like the sort of New 52 and post New 52 Deadpoolized Harley in this book, and it's great. And also, if you like the animated series, you'll probably like this. Sean Gordon Murphy has been heavily influenced by Batman the Animated Series in a lot of ways. He's talked about it in a bunch of interviews. White Knight's great. Check it out if you haven't. Number 8 is Deceased. Now, if you watch my channel, you probably did not expect a Tom Taylor book to be on here, but I have talked about Deceased before, and it's really good. All the sequels are pretty good as well, but that first Deceased is my favorite, the first arc. It's really good. For some reason, Tom Taylor is not the best when it comes to writing in continuity comics, but Elseworlds, he does a pretty good job for the most part. I don't understand why. That seems to be just how it is. My theory is that when it comes to the in-canon stuff, he feels like he has a job to do, like he has to put out like some type of social message. But when it comes to Elseworlds, he's like, oh, none of this matters. I can just write a fun, good story. And then he does it. And it's like, why don't you just do that on your main books? But anyways, Deceased is really good. If you haven't read it, it's essentially a sort of like corrupted version of the anti-life equation, affects the DC universe. A bunch of heroes get turned into zombies, others don't. They gotta fight to survive. They gotta figure out if there's a way to cure this or not. Some people don't even get a chance to get cured if there is a cure because they just get straight up killed when they're zombified. Some really emotional moments in here. It's definitely one of the more emotional DC comics in recent memories. Like, I remember there's some moments in here when I first read it that it got to me a bit. It's really good, which again you wouldn't expect from Tom Taylor because he's not too great at that sort of thing generally. But for Deceased, he just nails it. Trevor Hairsine does the pencils, and yeah, I really enjoyed this comic. I still enjoy this comic. Like I said, the sequels are pretty good, so if you're looking for something new to read, you can read I think there's 3 different books for it. There's spin-offs as well, but as far as like the mainline Deceased stuff, I think there's 3 different ones. So yeah, check it out. At number 7, I've got Batman the Imposter, which I made a whole video about because I love the comic so much, so definitely check that out if you want to know more about it, but I highly recommend you read the comic first. It is from Mattson Tomlin and Andrea Sorrentino. Andrea Sorrentino is someone I've been talking about forever. He's one of my favorite artists of all time. He's so unique. He does stuff that no one else can do, and I love his style so much, and he's great when he brings his style to Gotham. In this comic, it's an early year Batman. I think it was year 2, year 3. I can't remember. It's a very early year Batman. There's seemingly an imposter Batman going around doing bad stuff, but also you don't know if it's actually just Batman. Batman might be going a little crazy, and the book, you find out in the end, which I won't spoil you for you here. But Batman's kind of off the rails. There's some things going on. Some of the people closest to him don't really believe him either. Leslie Tompkins finds out in the very first issue that Bruce Wayne is Batman. She kind of gives him an ultimatum and a time frame of like, hey, you need to stop doing this stuff because otherwise I'm going to get the feds involved. Like, I'm going to get the cops involved. I'm going to get everyone to, save you from yourself. And it's a really interesting book. I don't want to say too much because it's only 3 issues and I don't want to spoil what happens in it. But it's just great. It's really good. In a world of oversaturated Batman comics, this one stands at the top of actually being like, hey, this one's really good. So read Batman the Imposter. Number 6, a comic that I almost never hear talked about is Nightwing The Untouchable. So there was a time when Nightwing went through a couple writers, and one of those writers that came in was Sam Humphries, and he came in and he wrote one arc, and it was fantastic. Now, the ending is lame. The ending is very disappointing because the rest of the comic is top-notch and amazing. Also, Bernard Chang does the pencils for, I believe, all of it. I think Jamal Campbell and Alex Sinclair come on for like one flashback issue. But other than that, it's Bernard Chang that does the pencils. Very pretty book. I really like the colors as well. But anyways, it's not talked about enough how good this comic is. There's this new guy that comes into town, or is he an old guy? This guy in a white suit and sunglasses called the Judge. He comes to Bloodhaven. He starts influencing people to do things like just your normal everyday person will then suddenly just like stab someone in the throat. And it's like, why are they doing that? And then there's always a golden like casino poker chip left at the crime scene, and it's related to the Judge. And you find out during this that turns out when Robin first came to Bloodhaven, yes, when Dick Grayson was Robin, he took on the Judge, and the Judge got away because Dick made a mistake by getting a bit too feisty when fighting him and allowed him to get away. So this guy killed a bunch of people and then got away, so it's been haunting him for years, and now he's back, and he wants to know what's this all about, and it's really good. It is really, really, really good. Like, I love this comic so much. It's just the ending does bring it down a bit for me. The ending, I won't spoil anything that happens, but the ending's kind of lame. And the ending's not like the most horrific thing. It's not like they ruined everything, but it's kind of like build up, build up, build up, and then fizzle. And it's like, But the build up is so worth it. Definitely read it. It's really good. Sam Humphries just randomly came into Nightwing, wrote a fantastic arc, and then just left. And it was just so random, but really good. Number 5, we have Rogues, the Black Label book from Joshua Williamson and Leo Max. In this comic, the Rogues, aka the Flash's villains, they have been sort of on probation for like 10 years. They've been clean. They haven't really been doing much. But Captain Cold's sick of it. He doesn't like just being a normal everyday Joe. He's not a big fan of it. So he gets the gang back together. He gets an idea because things that happen. He's like, hey, there's all this gold, like untraceable, untracked gold in Gorilla City that we could take. Because, if you steal that, the U.S. government's not going to care if you steal gold from Gorilla City. The international, Interpol, whatever, whoever does not care. The world's governments don't care if you steal gold from Gorilla City. Only Gorilla City cares. So he's like, we could do this. So he puts together the Rogues. They go, they try to steal gold from Gorilla City. They try to infiltrate Gorilla City. It's a lot of villains that are out of their prime and just fantastic. And Leo Max's pencils are so good. It's Black Label magazine sized, so it's really big and beautiful. I love, it's such a good looking book, and there's so many great moments in here. And again, it's Black Label, so they don't have to sit within the confines of being in a in continuity, so I don't have to worry about if they want to kill someone or if something huge wants to happen. There's a lot of moments in here like, oh snap, that happened, and it feels great when those moments happen because it doesn't feel like forced or like trying to be edgy or anything like that. But yeah, it's a really good book, and if you like those characters, if you're a big Flash fan, if you haven't read the Rogues, you should definitely read it. Even if you're not a big Flash fan, you should. But if you are a big Flash fan, it'll mean that much more to you. Yeah, Rogues, fantastic. At number 4, I'm kind of cheating because what I have here isn't a story arc necessarily. It's a one issue, 100-page spectacular like special, which is Man and Superman from Marv Wolfman and Claudio Castellini, I think is how you pronounce the name. Great book. Really enjoyed it. It is essentially Marv Wolfman's take on Superman's early days. You get to see him leave Smallville, go to Metropolis, talk to Lois for the first time, face Lex Luthor for the first time. A lot of stuff that you've seen a lot before, but this time it's from Marv Wolfman, one of the best comic book writers of all time. And he really cares for the character of Superman. He's talked about how he's his favorite character, and it really shows through. It really shows his love for the character in this comic. And it's just great. Like, as we've had Superman's origin and early days told a billion times, but that shows how good this comic is. The fact that Marv Wolfman's still able to stand out with this. And it's a cool story behind this because this was written a long time ago, but didn't get published. It got held back at DC, and then it finally got published within the last couple of years. And I'm very happy about that because it would have been really sad if this never got to see the light of day because it's really good. And yeah, just read it. It's a good comic. At number 3, we have Hawkman Volume 2, Deathbringer. Sadly, Robert Venditti's Hawkman run didn't last long, or lasted like 3 volumes, and it was really good. It just got canceled because not a lot of people read Hawkman, but yeah, it's really good. Brian Hitch does the pencils, and Volume 2 was my favorite of the series. So the premise for this is Carter Hall used to be Qatar Deathbringer, and he brought death upon the universe. He went all along the universe serving this like dark lord god thing, and he killed a bunch of people and sacrificed to this dark god until he just got visions of this woman constantly telling him, hey, you should stop doing that. You should revolt against him. So then he did that. He revolted against the dark god, died, and then in the afterlife he was told, hey, you can be judged right now, or you can be reincarnated across all of time and space, and like until you save as many people as or more people than you killed. And so he's like, all right, I'll do the second option. So that's why he's getting reincarnated. It's a really cool little aspect to Hawkman's character. I like that. I think that's really cool. But Robert Venditti has a lot of cool stuff, fleshing out Hawkman more and his mythos more throughout this entire series. So in this, he ends up, the Deathbringers are back, and he's got to stop his old band of boys. And it's really good. It's badass. It's sick. Robert Venditti is a fantastic writer. He's become one of the best at DC. Well, one of the best in all of comics currently. Everything you read from Venditti currently, it's just always quality. It's always great. So, and Hawkman's no different. He's really good. And just, if that pitch didn't sell you alone, I don't know what will. Because, you know, Hawkman used to kill a bunch of people. Now he's being reincarnated till he saves more people than he's killed. But he killed so many people that he's got to save a lot. And now his old boys, the Deathbringers, are back, and he's got to stop them. It's awesome. Read it. At number 2, I've got World Saga, which is from Philip Kennedy Johnson's run on Action Comics, Superman, and it's so good. It's really long. You have the prelude to World, then you have the actual World Saga. I'm talking mostly about the World Saga here, not the prelude. There's a lot of artists. I want to get through all of them real quick. So we've got Daniel Sampier, Miguel Mendoza, Ricardo Federici, Dale Eaglesham, Will Conrad, Ian Churchill, Brent Peoples, Fico Ocio, Brandon Peterson, and Max Rayner. I think that's all of the artists that were a part of this, because this arc went on for a long time. Went through a lot of issues. It's really good. I really enjoyed it. I hope I pronounced the names right there for the artists, because they deserve it, because the artists on this series are fantastic. And essentially the story is basically sort of Superman being Moses, essentially. Superman goes and freezes people, kind of. So you got these people called the Philosians that turns out were part of this. They're descendants of Kryptonians that were like this fringe science colony, and they got enslaved by Mongol on Warworld. And Superman finds out about this and kind of is like, hey, why is Mongol allowed to just do space slavery and no one does anything about it? And then you find things out about that, things with politics in space and why no one goes after Mongol and what's going on here and there. And Superman goes with his crack team of a bunch of idiots, because you had Grant Morrison wrote a comic where he put together the team that Superman uses to go to Warworld, and it's the worst team ever, and that comic sucks. Don't read it. Love Grant Morrison. Grant Morrison didn't exactly do a good job with that comic. That comic is ass. Don't read that comic. But anyways, just know Superman has a horrible team that he goes there with. They get taken out instantly. Superman gets captured. He gets depowered. He has to fight through a lot of things. He has to fight in the arena. He has to save some kids. And it's just great, classic Superman. So good. Superman going and fighting a space slaver and saving these slaves on Warworld is just so cool, and I love it. And it's amazing. And like when I mentioned all the artists earlier, the art in almost every issue is fantastic as well, and you get a lot of different styles here, and it's really cool. And Philip Kennedy Johnson always does a fantastic job with world building, and it's no different here. What he does with Mongol to flesh him out, and how he establishes Mongol, and what he does with the lore behind Warworld is so cool. His world building is just second to none. He clearly loves world building. He loves it, and everybody, like, if you read The Last God, which I was thinking about putting on here, but that's like, when I think DC Comics, it's technically, like, that's a Black Label book, but it's, like, not, like, a superhero DC comic, so I didn't put The Last God on here, but that comic's amazing. You should read that as well. But yeah, World Saga is definitely worth your time. It's a big comic. It's a big boy. They got a nice collected edition you can get now, but I highly, highly recommend it. My number one comic is going to be very controversial because a lot of people disagree with me, but I don't care. It's Doomsday Clock. I love Doomsday Clock. I think a lot of people don't like Doomsday Clock because, well, first you have the Alan Moore people that just suck him off at every turn. They're like, Alan Moore said no one should work on anything Alan Moore's ever touched, and Alan Moore, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, nice, good, that's fine. Have your opinion on that. That's a problem, I think, with people's perspective on this book, is it's not a Watchmen sequel. It's a DC comic first. And you could kind of say it's a Watchmen sequel, but it's a Watchmen sequel second. The way it uses the Watchmen characters is great, but it's not here to service those characters. It's for a DC comic. And people even asked Jeff Johns about it, and he talked about how it's not a Watchmen sequel. And it never was supposed to be, and people shouldn't expect that. But also, you have Gary Frank on pencils, who's my favorite. I love Gary Frank, and man, he just kills it every time. So in this comic, if you haven't read Doomsday Clock, big event. It wraps up everything with DC Rebirth, everything that was started from the beginning. If you read the Rebirth issue #1, and everything that transpired through there, and to now it gets wrapped up in Doomsday Clock. And in Doomsday Clock, in the Watchmen universe, it's 7 years after the whole Manhattan incident, where a giant squid alien killed a bunch of people, and after that, Rorschach's journals get published, so people find out what Ozymandias did, and they're like, oh, Ozymandias is the reason all these people died. So he's on the run. A lot of bad things are happening in the Watchmen world. It's falling apart, and Ozymandias is like, I need to get Dr. Manhattan to save our world. Dr. Manhattan's off being weird, like always, and Dr. Manhattan, he's like omnipresent, except there's a point where he doesn't know what happens. There's a point where he sees Superman running at him with a closed fist, and he goes and he swings at him, and then everything goes blank. He's like, I don't know what happens. He's like, does Superman kill me? Does when that happen, I destroy every single universe? What happens? So he's like obsessed with Superman, and he's trying to figure out what's going on when they have this collision, because, when you're used to seeing like all points in time, and then suddenly you can't, you're going to obsess over that. And Dr. Manhattan does, of course. And then in the DC universe, there's this like this Superman theory where you have like you have people believing that the governments of the world like created superheroes. They weren't natural. Like Superman didn't, just come down from Krypton like he was created, blah, blah. There's all these different superheroes that people believe were created by the world's government. So then the world's government started recruiting different superheroes and preparing for an arms race with superheroes, essentially. And tensions are rising. So there's a lot of things happening. There's mysteries that are revealed. It's really, really, really good. And it's one of the few comics in recent memory where I was anticipating the release of every issue. A lot of the times, even like I said, there's a lot of great comics still coming out, but a lot of times I don't really anticipate them. It's just like, oh, new comics here, I'll read it. Oh, it's great. And I don't really have like a lot of hyper excitement for those comics when they come out. But with Doomsday Clock, I was like, new issues coming out. I'm going to drive, like, as soon as it comes out, I'm driving to my comic shop. Like, I can't wait. And Doomsday Clock lived up to it for me as well. A lot of people didn't. For me, it did. I'm a big fan of Jeff Johns and Gary Frank, and I think they did a fantastic job with this comic. And yeah, Doomsday Clock. Don't want to spoil it if you haven't read it. A lot of people disagree with me, don't like it. A lot of people think Watchmen's completely sacred and you shouldn't touch those characters. But I think it was cool what was done with them. I just think it's cool how Jeff Johns took one of the most cynical characters ever in Dr. Manhattan and had him be inspired by Superman. I think that's really cool. And also tying everything up with Superman and having him be the linchpin of the DC universe, which obviously makes sense since he's the first real DC superhero. I just love it. It's a celebration of my favorite character, and there's a lot of cool stuff that happens in here. I love Doomsday Clock. So that's it. That was my top 10 DC Comics arcs of the past 5 years. This was kind of a hard list to make, going from, because there was a lot of comics. There were some comics that I was like, oh, this comic that I remember was really good, like Nightwing: The New Order. It ended in 2017. I was like, damn it, that's 6 years. There were some comics I wanted to add in here, but it's like, oh, those were, man, 2017 was 6 years ago. That's insane. But anyways, that's it for this video. Let me know in the comments below what you think and what would be your list. I really want to see what your guys' lists are. Please let me know in the comments below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see y'all later.
Hey, skinny boy, saucy boy, I be running to the bank. Yeah, you know I hit the gas in the whip full tank. Riding past the ocean while I'm listening to Frank.